Good afternoon. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series. And today we're going to be talking about the lore and quest guide for the Massing at Osgiliath. This is a print-on-demand quest. It was released at Gen Con 2011, which was after A Journey to Osgiliath but before the Hills of Emyn. But it doesn't really fit in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle. So let's take a look. There are reports of increased orc activity around Ithilien, and you have been sent to investigate. You enter Osgiliath and cross the river. On the outskirts of the city, you see a horde that surpasses all expectations coming down the Morgul Road. So, in the current cycle of quests, Osgiliath is way up to the north. Osgiliath is way up to the north here, and Ithilien is way down by Gondor. North Ithilien and South Ithilien in this area between the river and Mordor. In the Two Towers, this is where Frodo and Sam encountered Faramir and his company of rangers as Frodo was traveling with Sam and Gollum from the Black Gate at Morannon, and they were going through Ithilien, headed for Minas Morgul. In the quest, our party, we have heard of activity in Ithilien and have been sent to investigate probably from Minas Tirith, but it doesn't say where from. So we head to Osgiliath, which is here, which was once the capital city of Gondor, and we spot a party of orcs coming from Mordor, from Minas Morgul, down the road toward Osgiliath. This is likely a reference to the Return of the King, when Osgiliath was taken by the orcs. And in the movie, the remaining defenders were then forced to flee across the field with a Nazgul in pursuit. This is a challenging quest if you're playing progression style at this point in the game. As the van of the army enters the city, some of the horde's outriders are aware of your presence and head in your direction. Drawing back, you make a hasty retreat across the river. The outriders and scouts of the army have cut you off from the bridge. You desperately seek the likeliest place to cross the Anduin. The cold waters of the Anduin rush before you, but the current is weaker here, and you have to cross. The outriders and van of the Dark Lord's army are closing fast behind, and their archers will make the attempted crossing even more dangerous. The bravest members of your band turn back to distract the oncoming horde, so that the rest of you might escape. You made it across the Anduin and are leaving Osgiliath when a fell shriek splits the air. You begin the race across the Pelennor fields to the safety of Minas Tirith, but a new enemy follows behind. So, the setup for this one. I would say this is a more difficult quest than any we've encountered before, save Escape from Dol Guldur, at this point in the game if you're playing progression style. You have to add, at the start of the game, one of each type of these scouts to the staging area, which means you're going to start with 3 enemies in staging. And if you're starting around 30 threat, which is pretty common for a deck, you're going to be engaging 2 of them first turn. The remaining enemies get shuffled into the deck. For Phase 1, all you need to do is make 7 progress, although the initial challenge is going to be clearing the staging area, and I would not recommend moving on to Phase 2 until doing so. That is typically the case The overwhelming majority of the quests you don't want to move from phase to phase with cards still in the staging area unless you're forced to by some mechanic, such as threat increases or increasing damage that you can't handle that forces you to get out of a phase as fast as you can. But there's nothing special going on in this phase, and there's no reason not to linger until you take on the enemies. So quest lightly would be my recommendation, and battle the enemies. And then when the staging area is clear, then you can move on to phase 2. The only caveat being that you can't travel to West Bank locations until after you cross the river. Now there's a second reason to linger in phase 1, which is that in order to actually pass stage 3, you either have to sacrifice a hero or a Ranger of Ithilien, and the only way you can get Ranger of Ithilien is if one of them comes out of the encounter deck, either as a encounter card or as a shadow card. Ranger of Ithilien looks like this. When revealed, the first player takes control of Ranger of Ithilien, exhausted and committed to the quest, and then you reveal another encounter card. And if it's a shadow card, you deal 2 damage to attacking enemy, and then you can exhaust one of your characters to take control of Ranger of Ithilien. And you're really going to need one of these to pass the quest in solo play. In multiplayer, you may be able to get away with sacrificing one of your heroes, but in solo, you really can't, and the problem is there's only 2 of them in the deck. So that introduces quite a lot of luck in solo play. So you need one of these, which requires some luck for it to be in the top part of the deck. But assuming that you get that luck, and you have cleared the staging area of enemies, you then advance to stage 2, at which point you can't play more than 1 card from hand each round, so you really want to be set up before you exit stage 1, because it's going to get a lot harder to set up in stage 2, and you probably just want to pass stage 2 in 1 turn with a clear staging area, or as close to it as possible. And the third stage, once you've passed stage 2, then you have to, it says in order to commit a characters to the quest, a player must first choose a hero or 1 Ranger of Ithilien and discard it. Then you can commit characters to the quest, and you only need 1 progress, so you should only need to do that once. But that's another reason that you need the staging area clear, because if you should fail, then you're sunk pretty much. You don't want to discard a hero when you're playing solo. You only have 2 left, and the final part is pretty difficult because you're going to be taking on the Witch King. So you really need a Ranger of Ithilien, and you're typically only going to get 1 shot at it. You need to discard the Ranger of Ithilien, which allows you to commit to the quest. And then you can pass the 3rd stage and move on to Race to Minas Tirith. When revealed, you add the Witch King to the staging area. And you've now crossed the Anduin, which changes some encounter cards and some shadow cards a little bit. And then you need 15 progress. You don't have to kill the Witch King, and typically in my playthroughs I won't. The problem with the Witch King is that while he's in the staging area, each character gets -1 willpower, and that's very difficult to deal with. So what you typically want to do is, when you travel, or when you reveal phase 4, add the Witch King to the staging area, you want to engage him the same turn, the same round, and after he attacks, you raise his threat by 3 to keep him in your play area and not in the staging area, because otherwise he's going to return to staging area. You either have him take on a chump blocker, or you use Feint. Feint is what I used. It's a very effective card against the Witch King. You can't use like a forest snare on him or anything. Feint is one of the only ways to prevent him from attacking at this point in the game if you're playing progression style. If you have the board state to do it, you can simply kill the Witch King. Otherwise, Feint, and then hopefully, if you've set up well, you can get the 15 progress in 1 round and win the game. But that does all of this, 2, 3, and 4, require you to clear out the staging area in Phase 1. If you move on from Phase 1 with the staging area not clear, you're probably going to lose in true solo. So you've got to stall, quest precisely, quest so that you don't take threat, but also don't make too much progress until you've cleared the staging area and set up your board so that you can have a way to deal with the Witch King and still make about 15 questing progress each round. And you need a Ranger of Ithilien. So those are the requirements. Don't leave Phase 1 until you're capable of making 15 progress in one round. And you've got a Ranger of Ithilien on your side. And if you've got that in Phase 1, then you can move on to Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4. And it's not a guarantee, but you've at least given yourself the best chance possible to win. This is a common theme in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle and early in the game, is stalling in Phase 1 in order to set up. That's the ideal strategy, in my opinion, in a few of these quests. Let's take a look at some of the encounter cards. You've got unique mechanics where, for example, this location has +3 threat if you have crossed the Anduin, which occurs in Phase 3. And in Phase 4 it says players have now crossed the Anduin. You've got a few locations like that. Pelennor Fields that have an effect if you have crossed the Anduin or haven't. If you have crossed the Anduin, players must travel either to Pelennor Fields or raise each player's threat by 3. You've got some penalties for taking attacks undefended. You've got a mechanic where the shadow card makes you discard an ally card from your hand, or he will get +3 attack. So some more complicated things than we've seen at this point in the game. And it's a unique quest and I really like it. I think the challenge is relatively well balanced. Pretty well balanced. So I enjoy playing this quest. It's not an easy quest though, for sure. May take a few tries to beat it. It's not going to be beaten by every deck out there. But it is a fun quest. The first time we get to fight the Witch King. And you can kill him if you want to. That's a valid strategy, or you can just run away from him. But that's my advice if you're struggling with this quest, is don't advance out of Phase 1 until you've cleared the staging area. You've got enough willpower on the table to make 15 progress in a round, including accounting for whatever's going to come out of the encounter deck. And you've got a Ranger of Ithilien on your side, and that does require some luck because there's only 2 Ranger of Ithilien. There's only 2 copies of Ranger of Ithilien in the encounter deck, so it does require a little luck to get that set up. But if you do it, then you shouldn't have any. Well, you should have at least a good chance to beat Phase 2, 3, and 4 without much trouble. Preferably with the use of Feint. You can also play Gandalf to tank the Witch King or just use a chump blocker. But you do not want to leave him in the staging area, because with his 6 threat against and -1 willpower on every character, it will be very difficult to get the 15 progress you need. Very, very difficult. So, thanks for watching.